start by saying this must have been a really exciting, albeit quite challenging task for you to kind of enter into this franchise at sequel stage and mark your own identity onto it.
Yeah, it was exciting and it was challenging, but I was thrilled to do it because I saw the first film as a fan. I didn't know anyone who worked on it, and I know Matthew Vaughn. I saw it, you know, in a similar fashion the way you probably saw it, and I loved it. And so when Matthew asked me if I was interested, I jumped. And I was really fortunate in that I didn't have to think like, how am I going to put my own stamp on it? Because Matthew wanted me to do that. He said, look, I want to hire a writer-director. I want a filmmaker who has their own point of view, so make your movie.
And I found that this is a bit darker than the first film. And was that more a kind of a reflection on the comic book? Because that's quite a dark and sadistic comic.
Yeah, it's so funny. It's a bit like a Rorschach test because some people think it's darker, some people think it's more optimistic and less dark. I just tried to make the best movie I could make based on the source material and tried to trust my gut. I mean, there's some places where we backed off of what was in the comic book, and there's other places where we pushed it further. And I just tried to think about, as a fan of the first film, what would I want to see from a sequel.
And there was one line, I think, where he says, Kick-Ass says, this is not a comic book, this is real life. And I thought that was quite a good, that kind of summarised the film for me, because it managed to have kind of humanistic kind of traits and themes. Yeah, it was sort of built, sort of dressed up in this kind of comic book violence. Was that quite difficult to find the balance between the two? Yeah,
it was beyond difficult. I mean, and there was no sort of easy prescription for it. It basically was an effort that involved pushing it on the set so that then we had the flexibility to pull it back in post and just, you know, constantly tinkering with it until we found what we felt was the appropriate balance. And fortunately, you know, I had great collaborators in Matthew Vaughn and Mark Miller, and we just talked about it all the time until we felt we found it.
Because on one hand, Kick-Ass 2 kind of subverts the comic book genre, but on the other hand, it kind of abides by it. That must have been quite interesting as well to do.
Yeah, I love Kick-Ass for that reason. In my mind, Kick-Ass is to superhero movies what the first Scream was to horror movies. You know, Scream was not Scary Movie, right? Scary Movie's a parody. Scream was a horror movie, but it still was funny and fun and enjoyed breaking rules associated with the genre. And so I think that's what Kick-Ass is. Kick-Ass is a superhero movie, like the stakes are real, but at the same time, it acknowledges the genre and likes to have fun with it and break the rules.
This is much kind of Hit Girls movie as it is Kick-Ass is. What was the decision behind that to give her a bit more of a prominent role in this?
I think it's interesting. I actually think of it as sort of three different stories. It's Dave's story, Mindy's story, and Chris's story, and they're very much on their own tracks until they come colliding together in the final act. And I just think that was sort of the natural evolution of the stories, that you had these three characters that you kind of met through the eyes of Dave in the first film, but now it was time to spend time with all three of them and tell their stories, because they were all asking similar questions, just coming up with different answers.
And talking of Chris, because for me, he's the kind of stand-up performer. Yeah, he's got a brilliantly kind of dark aspect and being very funny, obviously, at the same time. Did he choose his outfit? That's what I remember.
No, and I think he was quite unhappy with me because I chose his outfit. You know, one thing I love about Kick-Ass is that it's the idea is, you know, it's superheroes in the real world, and if you're wanting to be a superhero or a supervillain in the real world, you don't have access to some armorer or seamstress on a Hollywood lot who's going to make you the perfect sort of unique costume. You got to figure out a way to make it on your own. And I thought it would be fun if Chris's costume kind of came from this fetish S&M gear that he found that was his mom's, and so that's where, you know, the costume comes from, that story point.
Another great performance is Jim Carrey. Now, there's been a lot of kind of publicity surrounding Jim Carrey, and I was just wondering, what's the kind of general consensus amongst the cast and crew that he's kind of kept himself at arm's length on this project?
Here's the thing about Jim Carrey. You love him in his movies because you have no idea what he's going to do or say. And in real life, you have no idea what he's going to do or say. So I was quite surprised by his comments because he was a fantastic collaborator. I loved working with him. I think his performance honestly speaks for itself. So I hope people watch the movie and judge for themselves.
And I was speaking to Mark Miller last week, and he was speaking about Kick-Ass 3 is already something they're going to do. Is that something you might be interested in?
You know, it's funny. As a fan, I can't wait to see where the characters go. As a filmmaker, it's something I haven't really allowed myself to ponder because I think it's really important to make a movie that has a definitive ending. And we all know those films that overtly set up sequels because they're not really that satisfying. And I wanted our ending to be satisfying, so I haven't really allowed myself to think about it as a filmmaker yet. I'm just kind of letting go of Kick-Ass 2 right now.
So my final question, just about quick mention about X-Force, because we're very, very excited about that one.
Yeah.
You must be equally as thrilled to have landed that job.
Yeah, I could not be more excited about that. I'm writing it right now. I'm into the script, and I'm figuring it out, and I think it's going to be a fun movie.
We look forward to seeing it.
Thanks so much. Hey, it's my pleasure.
Thank you.
Take care.
Cheers.